in this region, and not only just the automotive sector, but the diversification of the economy of this region. We have started to see serious inroads being made in the agro-processing sector. I think last year, November, we were launching one of the most exciting plants in the IDZ, where we are seeing a company that was operating as a family-owned business outside Gunube in East London, having been moved into the IDZ and grown 4 times its size, and actually attracted an international partner that is doing high-end cheese production. And that is the kind of production that is not prevalent in South Africa, because we are importing, I didn't know until that launch, that we have been importing 70% of the kind of cheese that we use for McDonald's, for KFC, for Burger King. And this company now is doing it here in Buffalo City. And pulling milk from as far as Ngobo, Pedi, and even Port St. John's. And that's the extent of backward linkages that we want to see with the kind of manufacturing that is happening in the IDZ. One of the key features in terms of the work that has been done in the East London IDZ is the development of a science and technology park. I think we are the first IDZ in South Africa that has basically made a conscious decision that we're not just going to be a platform for industrialists to come and manufacture and for multinational, but we must have a program that is looking at the development of grassroots technologies, where we take ordinary SMMEs with ideas, assist them with 3D printing and prototype development until they are able to commercialize their industries. This is a program, again, that we are still lobbying government to give more support to, because we have seen other countries, like Taiwan in particular, that started being assemblers of other people's technologies through a program like this, actually making inroads into development of new industries and new technologies by our own people. And through this Science and Technology Park, we are particularly, I've been saying on every platform, one of the things that is at the forefront of what we are saying as East London IDZ is that we need to be mainstreaming incubation of manufacturers in South Africa, particularly black manufacturers. COVID has brought a lot of talk around localization, and we are saying that let's come up with policy instruments, let's come up with incentives and support measures where, as a country, we are a lot more deliberate in developing our own small and medium manufacturers and are able to give them the support that they need. Maybe let me stop there for now.
Thank you very much to the CEO of the IDZ. Interesting key issues that he's raised there that we're going to have follow-up questions on some. And from one IDZ to the other.
Just to add to what Usimpiwe has said, maybe to expand, we were at a session arranged by the DTIC about 2 weeks ago, which is about further work they've got to do around the SEZ program. When they then speak about the success of SEZs in the country, and one of the problems is that there are many other SEZs that were declared, but they've actually not taken off. And there were top 4 SEZs that they mentioned, and 2 of them are from the Eastern Cape. Now besides the investment story, the top 2, the 2 from the Eastern Cape didn't arrive there because it was by chance. And this is the issue around being able to realize what is possible. So it was a combination of being able to collaborate with a lot of people to create value, but build institutions with strong governance, as well as build capability. So when you speak about an ethical, capable developmental state, this is how it's exemplified, because as the Premier was saying, you can speak about stuff, is when you do it, when it becomes real. So that is, and I'm not boasting that they necessarily have got the best of those things, but they definitely made sure that they've got the fundamentals of those things. But I also wanted to open Premier with a remark that is negative, but negative to show you what is the possibility. So the per capita investment you get in South Africa in capital, the average is about 10,500 rands. So if you take the investment being made, it's about 10,500 rands a person. That's the average. Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN will be slightly higher than that, but that's the average. The Eastern Cape's average per capita investment is 6,500 rands a person. That is a gap of about 4,000 rands a person. If you take our population, forgive me, I'm an engineer, so I must start with numbers. If you take our population, that works out to about a gap of 26 billion rands a year. Now, that reflects the historical underdevelopment, particularly of the homeland system. Now, on average in South Africa, the private sector is responsible for 70% of the investment. So you could theoretically say that government only needs, well, the private sector would need to bring about 70% of that 26 billion, which is closer to like 18 or something. I didn't calculate that figure. But if you note the fact that there is no private sector for 60% of this province, so government has to play its intervening role, the Eastern Cape should be asking for an additional 13 billion rands a year for infrastructure and capital investment for you to make some movement towards closing the development gap. So Premier, this whole, what is that formula of yours that you use in government about allocation based on population? It is actually continues to deal with, to perpetuate inequality. So that is the negative challenge. So the positive, but the positive aspect, based on what, if you take from what Simpue have said, the industrial interventions are also platforms for us to narrow that gap. So the investments that he then talks about are about narrowing that gap. So we're sitting now in the Coca SEZs with investments that exceeds 10, 12 billion rands, with 55 companies operating, permanently having people 9,000, close to 9,600 working there every day. And our job is to increase that number and to increase that per capita investment. And going back to capability, now, we were challenged by the Eastern Cape government around 2004 to then say, how does this capability start to impact wider in the province? It has then gone to impact wider in the country. So today, there is a session in which we need to go back. Our capability was asked for to help in the investigation of the banning of a key institution of democracy, which was our national parliament. And we are now going back to parliament to tell them what our investigations were. We were asked by the National Department of Public Works, because they leveraged the capability that was developed on the basis of the strong governance capability and everything else that started on the SEZ. But I want to give you an example of another one that ends up benefiting the Eastern Cape indirectly. So that capability is being leveraged to do projects outside of the Eastern Cape. We are intervening to assist in the rebuilding of schools post the floods in KZN. Is a big challenge that we've been given. In 2020, South Africa was at risk of losing a 15 billion rands investment by Ford, because it was not developing a platform for Ford to have a supplier base around it, in the same way that Island and ITZ has got a supplier base for Mercedes, amongst others. And this was because the Gauteng and DTIC, institutionally, they had not developed fast enough that institution, which could then make sure that you enable the investment by auto suppliers that were linked to what Ford wanted to do. And South Africa was at the risk of losing that investment to Thailand. So DTIC came and asked us to see what intervention we can make. So we have a team there that helped from the end of 2020. And as we sit today, there is an SEZ, which is also in that top 4, Simpiwe, because of the Eastern Cape's own input, that we have been able to spend, I think up to now, we've spent close to 3.5 billion rands. There are 9 facilities standing for automotive suppliers on the basis of us being brought in, Ford got the comfort to then make the investment of 15 billion rands for them to manufacture the Ford Ranger in South Africa, 200,000 units a year, and export it to other parts of the world. So you then think, oh no, but the Eastern Cape then, why does it not get that investment? But the next conversation was, how are we going to export these cars? And of course, the Durban corridor is quite congested and efficiencies are critical. There's now a discussion about a high capacity rail corridor between Tshwane and the Eastern Cape, which should then enable other further investments linking to the efficiencies of our ports that are based in the Eastern Cape. So indirectly, the Eastern Cape gets that investment. But the issue of the capability is about being used following what the Constitution looks at, because we're a united country, so we can't regionalize competencies if they can be leveraged for the state. So, and then I mentioned that because that couldn't happen without having the right people, the right capability, the right governance. And so, and therefore, there's lots of work we're doing to enable other SEZs to develop in the country. On this last one, Premier, I always make this joke. I opened with a negative thing around the per capita investment. I then always say the richest province in the country came to the second poorest for them to be able to get an investment. That must say something about what you may have, as they always say, itaimania pumel tuli. And I think just to close off, we are sitting on a wonderful opportunity. Two, one being about how we benefit from the disruption we see in global supply chains. That's the first one. And that's that's the lens we're putting at how we're looking at the new phases of investments. The next one, which is broader than just Kuka Premier, is that, and you didn't speak about this, but let's speak about it. Departments of government, in particular, and CEOs of entities also, sit on the ability to make decisions that impact on the lives of people. And I must mention this because I'm in the infrastructure space. And all it requires is somebody to write a letter that confirms that this thing can be done. And the bureaucrat will sit on a letter for 8 months and nothing happens. And there's nothing else that they've got to do, is just to write that letter. Or I need to write that letter. And we need to ask very, very hard questions as to why are we not doing the basic things that we've got to do. I'm not talking about these 26 billion rands that we do not have. I'm talking about the 12 billion rands sitting across all the different departments that we could invest today based on the allocation we have today. And I think we should take ourselves very, very seriously and be very, very hard on ourselves, because it is possible to do these things starting with the resources that we have today that gives others confidence to give us more resources in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the CEO of Kucha. I deserve to Mr. Kwezi Tia. The two SEZs have given the state of the IDZ address. And we've heard we've heard the content, and I'm sure our media here, they have different angles, particularly on the last part from Mr. Tia. So don't be shocked when you get a headline based on the last statement that you have just put. It's very, it's appetizing. Now I'm going to invite a colleague from community radio sector, Mr. Xola Nozeu. Ex-nguwe lubanga lubani disebenzise izitulo zinje wena. Ndasuswa ngokwesi. Masimkhwabela imcaphukiso loqhwatyelwa xa isiza ngaphambili Xola. And I'm inviting him because now the government has spoken, and we are going to give the media the opportunity to respond, focusing mainly on the theme of the day and what is it that we hope to achieve after this. And I will go to Florence first, from the SABC media strategist, just to respond. We've had government and the CEO from the IDZ and Kucha, And I just want to know, because the question comes, if they have this kind of information that is not going out there to the public, that watchdog of the public, is it because these stories are not enticing enough that they can get a space on our bulletins, on our headlines or newspapers and sorts? Can you just remark on this?
Okay, it's working. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. It is such a great pleasure to get information firsthand from the people that actually write the strategies and they do the planning of the various different programs of government. What we do find, however, is that that information, the crystallization of that information to the level of the umamxesibe, okanye uNontobeko, okanye ubhuti Zibanibani opha ezimine who works there, doesn't usually happen. Things are spoken of in boardrooms in great level, and they are not then crystallized to me to understand what does this thing mean to me at my level. Because at service delivery level, the media's role is to make the person who is the recipient of the programs of government to understand what those programs are. That is our job that we need to do. And what I would want to focus on is what are those things that we can do as a public broadcaster to take that information and to make it palatable. It's one thing when we speak here, but it's another when we make it palatable for me to understand where those opportunities are. For example, do the people of the Eastern Cape, or even East London for that matter, understand the impact of the energy generation that is happening within their own spaces? And the question then it will be, how does that affect me as a citizen of that particular area? As a broadcaster, our key deliverable is to inform everyone, everywhere, anyhow, and everything. And we would want you as government to come to us and let's talk to the people. Don't shy away from talking to the people. I think yesterday we had an engagement, and I encouraged colleagues to take up spaces, to speak directly to the different constituencies about these and tell me, what does it mean to me? How does it change my life? And we've got plenty of those opportunities from a media perspective. And bearing in mind as well is that from an SABC perspective, Xhosa is not only limited within Eastern Cape, they are everywhere in the country. So we've got those platforms where we can actually speak and engage with them wherever they are and in whatever space where they are. And by the way, you may actually speak to Xhosas not only in Xhosa, in other languages as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Masum Kwabeleni nai. And he is posing a challenge that I am going to throw to the communicators, because she's talking about a message that is supposed to go to a diverse society, the literate and illiterate, young and old. So if this message is complex, how do we break it down so that it also accommodates everyone? You don't change the message is the same, but it accommodates everyone in the communities that you serve. And quickly, I'll go to Sherry and James from the Daily Dispatch, just to react.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Premier, thank you for affording us this opportunity to be here today. And I think to just have frank conversations about the role of government, the role of the state and the media and how we can work together to make sure that we do have this Eastern Cape that we all deserve. So the Daily Dispatch celebrated its 150th birthday about 2 weeks ago. And during that session, we spoke at length about courageous journalism and why it's so important to, you know, the role that media plays in democracy, in ensuring that we have a thriving democracy. And I do think that we play a very important role, but we do also need help from government. Honorable Premier, earlier when you spoke, you mentioned the renewable energy initiatives, and I would like to add that it's on the front page of our newspaper today. So we are certainly not blind to the current situation that we are in as a country, and we really want to put the message out there in terms of what initiatives are in place. Now, I know a lot of us in this room have a lot of people in this room have a love-hate relationship with the media, and I will speak about the Daily Dispatch in particular. And you know, it's understandable. Sometimes the stories we put out there, it's controversial, it rocks the boat, but that's the role of the media. We are the ones who ask the difficult questions, and we put the uncomfortable out there. And it is not just to chase headlines, but it's also just to ask questions and to really hold people accountable. I mean, that's what we do. Over the last couple of months, we have adopted a particular mantra within the newsroom where we say people at the center. So whenever we do a story, we look at how are the people on the ground affected by this. So that really is what's been a big driving force for us in the newsroom. And yes, a lot of people say that the media is negative. We are all about bringing down the state, and you know, we turn a blind eye to the development. And that's definitely not the case. I would love to see more positive news out there. I would love to hear more stories of what's happening in this province so that we can take that news to our people. I do, however, find that it is difficult to break through. We deal with a lot of government communicators, and we have really good relationships with many of them. But there are those departments where it's just difficult to penetrate the wall and to get through the red tape and just to get simple answers to questions. I mean, we're all being frank here, right? So
I think we should name those departments.
yeah,
As part of trying.
that's maybe another
to fix
conversation. I'll just make one example. So a couple of months ago, we published an article on, not an article, it was a series on homelessness in the province. And that was really spurred by this one child who was sitting in the middle of the road outside the Beacon Bay Retail Center. And that led us to then ask the question, where can this child go? You know, what facilities are available in the Eastern Cape for this child? And so we set about interviewing various NGOs, government departments, and all we wanted to do was to say, if you need a place to go to, this is where you can go. And it was difficult to even get that sort of information. And here, it was not us chasing a headline, it was not us trying to find a way to bring government down, but we actually wanted to help people, and we wanted to use this profile as an opportunity to do that, where we can say to people, if you need help, the government has the resources for you to do that. And it was very difficult. We were sent from pillar to post, and we often find that with a lot of the stories that we want to do. So Premier, when you mentioned earlier that the HODs, we need to see them at the forefront, I really appreciated that. I would really love to hear more from the people on the ground, the people who really know what's happening in these departments, and share with us your programs and tell us what's happening. And I mean, we just want access at the end of the day. Yes, we've got some amazing communications people, but they have limitations to what they can tell us, and limitations to what they can share. So if we are going to make this relationship work, I think there really needs to be more access to us as the media.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting last point from Sherry Ann, that communicators are very, very limited. So they want to get information from the horse's mouth, for a lack of a better word. And I want the communicators to respond to that. What is it that is a challenge to them? When I used to be a communicator, I also got frustrated when a media query comes and I go to directorates and I don't get a response. And then what then happens after that? Are we, government, also limited to media statements and press briefings? What do we do beyond that? Because if we release media statements and we call media briefings, it only limits to a 30-second soundbite and one article on the front page or on the third page. What about the rest of the things that these departments are doing? So these are the things that we should talk about. Sharian again says some departments, it's difficult to penetrate. We must name them so that when we leave here, we leave with an understanding. Maybe they say we are scared of being misquoted. Let's talk about those things. I'm going to give my colleague, Uqolanoze, who is also representing a very, very critical sector in the community radio sector, because it is important that the voices of our leaders are not foreign to the people they serve. And community radio sector is one sector that also assists in getting the message across. Mr. Noze.
Thanks, Butkit. Morning, everyone. I'm Xolano Zeu. I'm from a body called Eastern Cape Community Radio Forum. It's a membership organization of about 26 community radio stations around the province. We package our services into one, and you are actually able to broadcast simultaneously in all our member stations at once. Look, the information that that you were actually presenting here today got me actually thinking that this is very much important information that would be beneficial, especially to communities that are seeking to get more services from government, especially developmental information such as this one. But again, it got me thinking to then say, is the way we're packaging it, is it the way that would actually be easily consumed by ordinary people at the level of community radio stations? Because where we're based in communities that most of them are underdeveloped. And the way we package information, we need to package it in a much more special way so that it's easy for the people, for our people to understand. Look, Premier, there was a way in which I was really satisfied with the way that our government was actually packaging information and actually responding to issues on the ground. During the time of COVID-19, the packaging of your messages as government, they were very simple. And you were spot on, you were just spot on to respond on any issues. And it was, we know even you how busy you are, but at that time, we could feel that we have really people that are caring, that want to actually assist. I'm hoping that we could actually steal in some of those strategies as government communicators to make sure that at least messages, they move faster and simpler in a way that it was actually packaged. I would say that as community radio stations, it would have been very difficult to get that information across to communities if it was not for this platform that we created, that is the Eastern Cape Community Radio Forum. I must say that we really appreciate this opportunity as Eastern Cape Community Radio stations, and we're willing to keep on working close with our local government. In fact, our government departments as well. But I somehow feel that I also read, like, take time to read the media releases and all that. But in a way in which all the when you look at the information that is there and look at the way radio packages its messages, there is no way that you can get that whole information across at the time in which radio packages its own messages. Somewhere, somehow, I think now that we are in the digital era as well, it would be nice to prepare such types of messages because they are for newspaper consumption. And then you simplify them in audio or in video for other media platforms to actually be easily to get them across. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Noze. He's raising a very, very important thing, Premier. He says during the time of crisis, your face and your voice was not foreign to the people. There was that constant communication and constant feedback. And he's now calling for the continuity of that. Let's treat that as if it is still the same status quo. Let's communicate constantly with our diverse communities out there. And now I nearly got into my shoes of a reporter or a journalist, and then I remembered that I'm just a mere facilitator, and all that I need to do now, you've been listening and you've heard what people are saying, and now it's your time to pose questions, to believe that Ian is still online, because maybe when he was making his input, you also took some notes. So it's time now for us to engage. I've got more than 10 questions, but it is your show. I've noted Mr. Pala. Okay. Yes, thank you, Premier. Both comments and questions, all right? I see Jeff Pa, Mr. Bala, and I want people to assist me. I've got microphones here. All right, and please note, it's a microphone, not a microphone. Just use a technique, it's micro, it's very small. It will amplify your voice. Okay, Mr. Pala. Mic,
Thank you.
Mr. Patala. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. English. Good morning to you, Honorable Premier, to all our colleagues from media, communicators, and from government as well. My name is Loiso Pala. I'm the business manager for the Eastern Cape Combo. Eastern Cape Combo ke ngumhlobo wenene FM, and also a younger station called True FM. And maybe just take the opportunity now to say that True FM has been expanding in the past 3 years with transmitters. So now it's available obviously in areas Emakanda, and very soon we're getting a transmitter that is going to take us all the way into the Nelson Mandela Bay, as well as Gqoga. So when we speak of a regional radio station, True FM is going to be that. And we've already experienced a growth of 66% since the last reading. It's a station, I'm taking the opportunity now before I make my comment, it's a station that we have, that speaks to the youth. And we've seen a growth in our 15 to 24 and in our 25 to 35, where the majority of the True FM audiences now sit within the youth. And whereas Mhlobo Wenene, primary is 25 to 34, and then the next one is 35 to 49. So I believe now when you look at the two brands, you can actually distinguish between the two, that one is not a mirror of the other, but one, and as much as both obviously speak to young people, but one is a youth radio station. And we've seen that in the partnerships, in the partnerships that we are beginning to build now, that, the partnerships we're building, and sort of the agreements that we're having is based on those who want to reach the wider market through Umhlobo and obviously the youth market in the region, in the Eastern Cape, which is True FM. I just want to, for myself, I'm really glad that I could make it today, because I think I nearly wasn't here, and then I called Ayanda Makawul, who I have to thank for your breakfast and I think I've been eating up until now. And I called and I said, it's really important that I should be here. And so I spent some time with the family yesterday, since it was my birthday, and then they allowed me to go. It's that time now. The families of 2022, you can't just because those are the silapho ngoku, and then abantwana must say, no, that's fine, Tata, you can go. And really because I'm getting to understand the heart of government. I'm at a place where I'm obviously still learning about our stakeholders, and I must say in the last year and 2 months I've come to know quite a lot. But maybe one thing that some of you may not be aware of is the fact that yes, the SABC is a public broadcaster. It has a public mandate, which is to serve. But as much as, we don't necessarily always chase after profit, we've got to ensure sustainability. So what that means is that for the time that we have, for the resources that we use, those cannot go outside of our premises unless sustainability is ensured. Yes, sometimes that can be called ROI, but we see it more as sustainability, because companies get depleted because they overuse what they have without any return. With that said, in many forums that I've sat, especially with communicators, I hear a lot of complaints about, about e-news, some of the guys don't arrive, or we try to get this information, and we never get that. And unfortunately, there's not a lot that we can force our news department to do, because they need to remain impartial. They need to do things not because they are told, but because they think it's the right thing to do, because that is how news remains impartial. However, there are other options, which is to partner with the station. And I know when I say the station, one will say, but is news part of the station? Well, even with us, news still remains independent of the station, as much as we are one entity, to make sure that it maintains its independency, because that is how news achieves its credibility, by being independent and not a mouthpiece of anyone. In our sense, coming back to the to the sustainability, there is a way that we can partner with you in creating campaigns that are going to communicate your message in such a way, and we've done that, we've done that several times. So for instance, for a fraction of the price, I sound like a salesperson now, of what you would pay for your 30 seconders, because I always know that, with government, we need 30 seconders. We'd like, the premier would like someone to go and, to go and speak. And obviously those comes with certain, they are on our rate card. But there is a way that we can partner in saying, we have this campaign, like I'm going to take the boardwalk one, for instance. It's the first time I heard a premier that the boardwalk has actually got entrepreneurs in. And so what I would do in that instance, which is my thought now, is that I go to the boardwalk and say, we understand that you think that our advertising is expensive. But how about we do this? How about we create a campaign that celebrates the entrepreneurs? And what we do is that we take that content and we take that content and we ingest it in our programming through featuring them on some of our features that celebrate, that celebrate people who have gained success from having come from nothing to becoming something. And then as we do that, we can then obviously then begin to bring the name of the boardwalk in there. And so then instead of it just being just normal advertising, we can be able to create something that lasts over 6 weeks, and within, of course, like within those 6 weeks, there's your conventional classical advertising, as we as we call it, and obviously some of this content ingested within within our content. We currently, and we have been working very successful with the House of Traditional Leaders, running the campaign Your Lwaluko, which lasts, which lasts I think for about 6 weeks for the season, Your Lwaluko, and they've been very happy with the service that they've been getting, and also the impact as well of those campaigns. Sorry, without taking much time, but I guess what I want to say is that some of the times, and I've said this to the to communicators before, but maybe just like myself, I need to say something 3 times before it really makes sense. There are ways that we can work together if you come and you say, okay, we don't have a huge budget, which is always the case, but we have this and we would like to do this. And then us, as, and then us through our public mandate, and then obviously making sure that we still remain sustainable. We have a way of crafting that, because as the broadcasters, we would know how best to stretch that investment in a way that is going to meet your imperative and also ours. I guess what I'm saying is let's continue to talk. Don't ever think that we cannot go beyond a point. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much, Mr. Ngis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bala. And then I've noted, where are my ushers? Or Mr. Petela? Salam sabotage. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Ngesi. Good morning to the leadership and particularly the Premier. Tatu Premier, I went to Mamukopane to explain in Doba. You were just wouldn't better than a soft glove, otherwise I was very early. You just saw me coming from the other side, otherwise I was here 8:30. So Mamukopane yon bete kaya. No, I just wanted to share some input on 2 things. Basically, one, to write on what the Honorable Premier was saying about pleading to the media. We will not get tired, just to plead that we're not going to dictate the editorial policies of media. They are independent, they are impartial, as Mr. Bala was saying, but we would like to plead that in so doing, please do share the good stories as well. I was very much impressed the other time when I saw a story by Nyembezi, Nkululeko Nyembezi, where he was talking about an aloe processing facility in Umzimvu municipality, funded by municipality, benefiting rural women, and so on and so on. So I'm saying it found expression in the media space, and these are good stories that government is doing. So we are saying, as much as we are reporting all these negative things about protests and all that, but in between news, Mr. Bala should be able to filter these stories every now and then, so that people can get to learn to appreciate that work that government, because now the narrative is being that we communicators are not sharing the information with you guys, and yet we do. But now when we share the information, we're not going to tell you, go and publish it. You decide whether it's newsworthy or not. And quite most often, Tatu Premier, they would say, it's not a story because it's something that we are supposed to be doing anyway as government. There is that element of an attitude that we are quite often received with. So hence I'm saying we are pleading. We are pleading, that's the word, that do share these stories as much as the negative ones. That is that, Chair. Yeah, that is that, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Petela is the head of communications, Alfred Nzo, district municipality. Maize apha kumba kubheke kudala phakamise kuqala ke uJeff. Inoba kuzathiwa ndiyifacilitate enobubele because andifumenanga xesha uba bathethe ixesha elingakanani. Ndibanike 3 minutes. 2 minutes. All right. And then ndinongeza ke
Yeah.
Uphi?
Name?
Yes, phakama mhlekazi introduce.
Yes, my name is Pat Njamela, ne? All the way from Eklesi. Good morning, Premier and everyone else.
Are you from the media, Pat, or you are a stakeholder?
I'm a stakeholder.
Okay.
It's true, look, there was a story here that caught me from a dispatch about a month or so ago. The headline says, finding a job can be a battle even if you have a qualification. If you read through the story, it says every parent always imagine themselves depending on us as a student, and not the other way around, especially when they manage to take us to school and help getting the qualification. That story, I couldn't sleep that night. And I said, I phoned this lady and said, look, please send me your CV so that I can have a look at it. I'll make calls, and I'm not promising anything. Within a month, she got the job. And I've told those guys from Dispatch that this is a story to tell. She's got, Shirley has got that story on her phone. I said, this is a story, it must be told. And the main thing that I want to emphasize is government is playing a lip service on supporting entrepreneurs. It always says it's a catalyst to doing that. Entrepreneurs are the best job creators, not the government. So can I plead to the government, the Premier? I told him my story today, and the CEO, Mr. Konjo, I will need assistance from you guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Pat. Jeff? I will come back to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Just to explain where I come from, I have been in the media for a long time, but for the last 8 years, I've been a lecturer at the Walter Sisulu University's journalism and broadcasting department. I'm always happy when I go out on stories, which I do sometimes, because we've got our online baby that we take care of, when I see many of our graduates covering stories. And a lot of them, I don't even know that they were there because they graduated before I arrived. Now, coming to what we are here about today, and it's very, very fascinating, and it's got me thinking, reflecting on the role that we play as the university and the Eastern Cape reporting in general. That maybe many news media houses in the Eastern Cape, the story that we're primed for is because of the way the province is, it is underdeveloped. I'm sorry, Premier, but you know, it's getting there. We are primed for stories of the people suffering. We are primed, our senses are sharpened for the stories of crime because our people, again, are not safe. And that's the story that we focus on. And I have been listening to the gentlemen who are part of the panel talking about the stories, all the developments, all the great things that have been happening. And it got me thinking that the business story in South Africa, it's a Johannesburg story. It's a 702 story. It's an ENCA story. If the SABC is covering a business story, it's their Johannesburg journalists. I mean, we know business journalists in South Africa. I probably wouldn't be able to count more than 5. The people that actually understand and go out and be sent. Our diaries in South Africa, they hardly have business stories. So maybe that is the problem. There are no business reporters that are in the Eastern Cape. There are no business reporters. If we want to hear about Guga, it's because Guga has had an announcement that is so big that it attracts the Johannesburg people. So maybe, as part of our reflection here, I know Algoa, you still have Chris Gibbons in the morning, yeah. And Chris does a quick rundown of all the news. I think as we reflect on this, we need to find a way to train, and this is a challenge for us as well as an institution, make sure that some of our proteges are placed at these business institutions and get to learn as part of their reporting, of their training on how business works, business reporting, and maybe they can help us. And maybe the Eastern Cape newsroom as well can start thinking about having specialized business reporting, because it's not easy.
Okay.
It's very specific.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Maize, government questions, those are the inputs, but you can reflect on those key issues that are raised from the floor. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, facilitator. That's very good. Honorable Premier, the executives, and everyone in the breakfast show. Mbulelo Mpupu is my name, from Education, Department of Education. Honorable Premier, I'm sure it is worth noting and commending the good work that we see from the Office of the Premier. In fact, when I was actually looking at your outreach to areas like Ntabangulu on the very issue of ex-mine workers, and today when I hear you bringing out some testimonies out of the outreach that you undertook with your office, I mean, for us, surely, it's such an emotional element of success. But it is important that we acknowledge the very sterling work that you continue to do as government, basically, because government function is to enable things to work. Because this one, on its own, you are basically creating an enabling environment for this kind of an important element within governance, which is communication, to thrive. So we want to say, keep it up. I normally say in my small corner, you are but a man of action. You continue to want to see things moving. But Honorable Premier, Mr. Mtia is saying we have got an opportunity wherein Pretoria line of rail to the Eastern Cape has got to find proper expression. Now I'm saying this is a double tick, good, but an investor attraction as well. We are having a threat that is equally coming in big and ugly, of the attacks to mainline buses in the province is actually highlighted in a number of our towns, small and towns that we need them developed. But we see these tendencies of trying to disrupt business activism in the same towns. So I'm sure if the Honorable Premier perhaps can actually give a shed light on what is the strategy that the government has taken around this one, to actually avert this kind of a situation.
As I learned.
Secondly, the IDZ operations, business versus load shedding. This is serious cause for concern. And the Honorable Premier is highly concerned about it. I read in Daily Dispatch that he was basically engaging the city manager and also, I'm sure, Ubabu Ukondlo laphayana. And are there any prospects of trying by all means to avert the same, more especially that Baba Kondlo, you are here, around what the Honorable Honorable Premier was actually trying to get out of you as a leader, as executives. Thanks, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Shadley? I think so. Tata Shadley and one end, and then we get our panelists to respond. So this is the second last.
Okay, good.
in this round, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shadley Nash from Algoa FM. I'm the news manager there. Thank you for this opportunity. Let me first acknowledge the comments and the observations by the Premier, my colleague in the media, and the other panelists. Just for your information, sir, Algoa FM News in particular has a keen eye on developmental stories because we want to speak good about the province. Mainly, and because it's the right thing to do, and also importantly, a lot of our revenues derive from the national market. And they sit and look at all the negative stuff, and we have a challenge on that level. So what we do from the news department is to share all the positive news that we get to our sales team so that they can take that message out there. We have, and like in the dispatch, they have an unspoken mantra, and ours is that we live here too. So we have investments here, so it's not in our interest to be negative. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negativity around, and most of the speakers have alluded to the levels of crime going up and so on and so on. And Mr. Premier, I don't know if anybody watched the Nelson Mandela Bay Council meeting the other night. There's the problem, sir, in my humble opinion, and that's my personal opinion. In fact, in your presentation to, I suppose, unfortunately, acronym Big F Forum the other day, you also laid down the gauntlet to them around this very same issues. And therein, I suppose, is a big number of the problem. But from our side, we are committed to this province. We have big investments there. Next time in Kabeja, we would like to come and visit our station. We have a beautiful new building there. And you can see what we're doing. And so we are committed here, and we want to work and partner with the government on a lot of things. So that's just our commitment from Algoa FM. Thank you.
Okay. Leone, ngamehla nokurhatyazo.
Molo tata, molweni. Ngenxa yoba ke ile nyanga ndicela usibeke ecaleni isingesi. Igama lam ndingu-Alime wakwaDyubhula Ifani. Ndisebenza eKumkani FM as the station manager. I am here as a representative of the Eastern Cape Community Radio Forum, holding a position of the TG in general. Besikhe sadibana ke nenkulumbuso eNgcobo. Samamela futhi sabe kanti noko sinethemba siyi-community sector into yokuba ngaba xa sesidibene sibambisene ubheka phambili kuyabalula. Ndicinga bafana ba my other fellow colleagues have also English have mentioned into yokuba ngaba there are izinto ezisibethayo in small businesses, especially with small community radio stations that we came to represent here today. Okay. No, it's fine, sorry. I don't intend to get pleasure, but sisaqhube sasicelo sasisiphethe ngokuya sasiseNgcobo sokuba ngaba there is a cost esibulalayo siyi-community radio station. And we are sitting here asking for uPremier to assist us. Asibambe ngesandla because we are seeing other community radio stations zikwimeko yokuba ngaba zigexa. Then that means into yokuba ngaba ukwazi ngoku uthetha uvakale ncakasana napha kumakhulu emakhaya. Kungabe kanti kunobambeka nongabambeki ngenxa yemeko ezikhululo zethu ezikuyo. kufinyanga ngoku asiqinisekanga uba abasebenzi bazawubhatalwa ngantoni kwizikhululo ezininzi futhi apha ephondweni. Ndicela ke nakwi-communicators ezikhoyo apha zibe kanti zinokubambana nathi isandla siyi-Eastern Cape Community Radio Forum. And fortunately, the president national, Mr. Xolanozewu, he's here, and he's also the provincial coordinator generating a business. Xa sihlala sithetha pha athi hey hayi umsebenzi unqabile alimi. So kufaka nje isicelo esithi ningasiyekeleli ngoba akubikho mnandi ubona esinye isikhululo sisokola futhi ube uyazi uba akho nto unoyenza. Sinethemba ke kurhulumente osiphetheyo, especially apha eprovinsini. Isicelo sami sokugqibela ke sibuyela kwimeko ebendikhe ndayibona eRadio Zibonele xa ibivalwa. Zikhona ezikhoyo apha endingayaziyo ke noba ngaba izono zabo kube kanti ziye zasebenzisa ii-premises zikamasipala. At some point ke kukho le nto caba kufuneka ngoku ngenxa ibuyi-community radio station you broadcast censored information of which that is not ethical. And if you refuse to do so, you are victimized to a point that now you have to defend yourself in the court of law. And it costs you money and unnecessarily you don't have such money. We've seen Ikucha FM, Gapa, victim of that. We are facing with huge challenges when it comes to Alfred Nzo and the voice of Matatiel. So sicela ubambisana ubonakala uba noko inyawo karhulumente likhona usincedise uxazulule ezi ngxaki zikhoyo. Enkosi ndabulela Brakith.
All right, thank you, Alime. Masiqhobeleni izandla bethuna ke inputs from the floor. Yes, there are direct questions and also there are comments. And on my side, the notes that I've made, what is it that we are doing that impedes media from telling a positive story? And Ujef there did raise something very important about a lack of business reporters. And someone else will talk about a lack of council reporters. People that understand the complexity of local government as much as people that understand the complexity of business and economic news. And of course, rightly so, he raised, because maybe someone here is busy writing a positive story about this media engagement. And when you step out, God forbid, someone is shot. And that story is going to take the headlines as if this whole thing was just a waste of time. So how do we then balance? So I'm saying here, I'm sure both government and the media can relate to these reputational implications in building the Eastern Cape that we want. Crime-related issues that overtake positive stories. Road infrastructure, tourism potential. Are we doing enough to attract tourists? I heard the Premier talking about a story headlined Dangerous Place in South Africa. What are the impacts? What is the impact of such headlines? And how do we defend ourselves in putting it out there? Is it because we want attention so that government pays attention so that Eastern Cape becomes a better place to live? The state of entities, rather state entities on economic growth and job creation, issues of youth unemployment. We had Uped there saying he read an article and he intervened. I don't know whether he says the intervention was not publicized. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So what seemed to be a negative story was publicized, but the response, which yielded positive results, did not get space on the media. So these are the things that I want us to talk about as I give back to the panelists to respond, the Premier being the first.
Seyikhawuleze yabuyela kum ngokukhawuleza. Qala usummarize lo. Uba kuthethwa kaninga-summarize ndithi njalo. Thank you very much, facilitator. Well, I think for me, it's just to received the feedback with a very open mind and open, warm heart, both from the panelists here as well as the people who have been engaging on inputs that have been made. I stopped complaining to SAPC, Ms. Makaula, about the prime news, Tosa, or Ongoni, after realizing that we are the most strategic province, and I don't want to say that so that other people know it. With the 3 bureaus you have, Gqeberha, East London, Obisho, covering also Mthatha, it's really unlikely that every day you can't get a story from Eastern Cape on news, the prime bulletin. Indeed, the issue is what do we do about that as government? What kind of content that goes through? Yes, for us, there's this element of saying, but you should be also having some investigative journalism. You should be concerned, also you are a citizen. You should also be willing to say, but what's going on? Why East London SEZ is able to open about 14 factories within this space when we're just talking about COVID-19 and all that? What's going on there? Can we go there as dispatch and try to check ourselves even before you are called by CEO? We are looking at that space, and I see it's not an easy thing. It's what we think should things be done. But because of our relations, I must say, what I've just observed and realized that generally there's a particular posture towards media. There's one MEC that I was talking to that I'm not going to mention about this event, and says, hey, Lando yako isaqhuba nemedia. What do you mean by into yam? When we are all expected to be there, yourself to be there, and all issues. I'm just making that as an example. It's a common attitude. It's a common attitude that you come across. No mayor is willing. Eke mayor wayixelela uba mayibheke kumhlobo wenene kwi-12 down. Uba ngathi uyigalele iBioslim ayilali iveki yonke elalaga lingekafiki because of what people have seen. And I enjoy going there. Again, mamele nje no-2 bengiqomba andikhona izandidumbisa. But it's important also to gauge and have a sense of reflection for people. And sometimes when you are given an opportunity to explain, what omnye umuntu pakoza nkqubo zomhlobo nezasekuseni, makangaphinda abizwe lo muntu apha eredweni. Ubona ukhalazela amanzi somewhere. Lo muntu lo unomlomo omnandi. Aw. Because ndinikwe chance that I must respond to with allegations and all other things that is making about water and all those. So when I give back government program content, he says, no. Because he wants to, this narrative that this person is creating, it must be the one that is understood by everyone. That made me to appreciate that as long as we are running away, whether it's politicians or whoever is supposed to be communicating. I know some communicators are very frustrated. I can be also a journalist. I can also be a shop steward, because principals are not keen. Principals are not keen. Communicators are frustrated. You might say the departments are not responsive and all that. Principals are not keen. And I've said, one thing bad about any politician is not to be willing to be known that you are here, you exist, and you are in charge of this space. And the only way that you can do that, you can't travel all the 715 wards of Eastern Cape, but the little time you have that you can make yourself available to TV, etc. So I used to ask MECs, but how do you feel when the whole month is gone, you are an MEC, but you didn't even appear on TV? Just appearance, see, on TV. How do you feel about it? You are an MEC. How do you feel about it? Because even other MECs in other provinces are competing for that space. So I'm just challenging MECs that are here. That sometimes media is not as bad as we think. Yes, they can be, but they are not as bad as we think. You can be in control of the narrative. You can be in charge. Correctly so. When we decided to say during COVID, let's stop this thing of waiting for inquiries. Let's actually throw ourselves to the media. By those weekly media, hey, they were tiring. And there was a man who was driving them. I felt like, hey, no, you are abusing me. This is too much. But the impact of that work, this is what now you are talking about. And this is what has saved so many lives. So that aggression from our side is important. And there's no reason why. Because what I know, whether you respond or you don't respond, when an article is going to be written, it's going to be written. You see, so I know sometimes you can respond and take your heart out. They don't even look at your response because they are already primed to have this angle. They will use this angle, which is it's a negative angle, etc. So what I'm just trying to say, in all what we're trying to do, we're trying our level best, and indeed there are positive stories. I think if it has happened before, it would have been for some time ago. Me and Kwezi here, I think would have been in this space for more than 20 years. He has left to Gauteng for a quite considerable time. But when I was an executive assistant to an MEC, with Kucha starting, he was an executive assistant to the CEO of Kucha, Pepe Slinger, when we started that Kucha. And that Kucha was started simply because there was an attitude of development in the Eastern Cape. Actually, National was not even convinced that Kucha must happen. Environmentalists were actually campaigning so strong against that Kucha that now you see being home to almost 50 new factories in the Nelson Mandela space. Actually, they were campaigning the way they were campaigning against the Shell on the exploration on the Wild Coast. They were doing the same, saying all sorts of things. Where to transplant, remove trees to the other side, create this and come back, and all those stories that were to do at that time. So, but also the investment on human capital for 20 years. Now he's back, he's a CEO, where he has also started almost 20 years or 20-something years ago. So the investment on human capital is also quite important. And I'm saying that in government, Eastern Cape, with all these challenges that we have, but one thing that we said will forever be negative will be issues of poor audit outcomes. And if you don't change this narrative from there, it's not going to be easy. But I can tell you now, 7 departments clean audits, and I can tell you by end of this term, our target is to have not less than 10 departments in clean audit. I'm not sure, Chief Editor, whether that has managed to get your front page. I appreciate that today, and I was not sure that you are not going to change that by 12 today. That's why I didn't comment about it. But I appreciate that we managed to get that front page. But I'm saying that positivity with a province that has been stuck into this negativity, corruption. You know, when we were faced with this thing during COVID, I had to force the EXCO, the cabinet of the province, to say, we're all going for lifestyle audit. We don't have a choice. It's part of the renewal. Let's go for it. It was not easy. I know somewhere in other province they did their own and no one knew about it because a private consultant was used. They slept and wake up with a report to say, no, we've got a lifestyle audit in this province and all that. I'm not sure. And we went to the state security agents and said, we want to do this. And people said, what do you want to be investigated? You were just inviting investigation on your own lives. Said, yes, we want it. All these MECs must be investigated. And that has been done. Report has been produced, and we've waited for a year and a half, even taken through the polygraphy process, because we are committed in fighting corruption. You see that man called Zwanga seated there. Today I still have something following me called Ngobo Boys. It was written by him, and I fought with him. I took him to press ombudsman and all that, but I can't be an enemy to Zwanga. Because, see, I mean, this is a life that we're creating when we're engaging the journalists and Zwanga now goes there and says, I'm not a political journalist. I was just told to write this story in front of the press ombudsman. So this is a kind of an environment that we would always want to create. Not that sometimes we will all forever be negative, but I'm saying I welcome your feedback, and surely from today, we are beginning another journey. I've visited the Delhi's dispatch office because I've been engaging the media. I will visit Algoa definitely. When I'm down back again, I will spend some time. I will go to Algoa. I've gone to True FM for some time. I've indeed gone to them now that they've relocated. I've been in Umhlobo. We can run, but we cannot hide. So we rather bring ourselves to you so that you tell us whatever that you want to tell us. So what is important, I agree, is this partnership, and really work aggressively to ensure that we compare notes, we share information. I'm happy with the feedback from USU on training of business reporters. That's another gap that we should be able to work around and see how best. Yes, community radio station, you know, we've packaged, whether you talk about state of the province address, all those that we've been actually doing. And even during COVID, we worked with you, we packaged and we made incentives available for you. Us is to call the local government space. I'm not sure if you wanted to advertise for people of Alfredo Petela. What makes you to go to a newspaper that is somewhere in the province when you have got local newspapers there for people of Alfredo, when you have got local community radios, unless you're saying people don't listen to the community radio station. I know Paikaiba, Umama Krotlan figure 2 radio stations mamelayo. Ngumhlobo wenene yivukani and masibuza uthini ngokufike le 27 ngokufike le engcobo unobuza akathatha ixesha uchange but ivukani nomhlobo wenene. So definitely sure. So that's why I don't get worried when there are negative articles about me in the print media. I got worried when it is in the radio. Uzayiva ke ngoku. Yo. Ifikile ke ngoku straightly. So I mean things like those. But I'm saying we are actually prepared to work with you. Sitters are available. We've packaged something for another radio station. For about 20 young people unemployed. Because when we're in this registration, they say, we are here, but we're volunteering, we're new presenters, we're still being recruited, but there's no stipend, there's nothing. But because it's better to stay at home, but I don't even have money to move from home to here as this new presenter that is likely to get. When we wrote to sitters, they responded because it's part of the skills development. They've got budget for that. There is no reason why we should be not approaching them as community radio station, ask them to help us how to package some sort of stipend for our presenters and all that, and they're able to do that over 2 years. So those are things that as government, we must be able to work together, and Office of the Premier being at the center. So we're going to create this sort of an ecosystem. Government supports SMME, and it's one area that we're focusing at, because we all agree, we all realize that there's nothing that we're going to do to cause a dent on the changing this problematic problem of economic development in our province. And we're not going to keep on saying to people, it's a colonial and apartheid. Yes, Eastern Cape is condemned to be where it is for all centuries. And how do we change that? We are that generation that must discover its mission and fulfill it. We can't keep on saying even others came and they left. Some of us were no longer going to think of leaving this province and go anywhere. We rather change this province to be a province that we are going to retire here. And in that process, change everybody's lives. You see, it's not that we don't have career. In politics, it's not a career where we are. We do have our own careers, but now we're here as servants of our people. So we think our commitment to this province is indeed about changing this province. And with all these key catalytic projects, I agree with funding formula, it's terrible. You are right, Kwesi, we've been talking about it, unfortunately. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the Cabinet Lekgotla National report was done there on infrastructure. For 28 years, national government has focused on Gauteng, on Western Cape, and KZN on the infrastructure. On the other side, government says, no, if you talk about Mtombo project, it's an investor-driven. Minister will tell me that, President will tell me that. Now, if you bring an investor tomorrow, so we won't be talking about Kucha and Richards Bay. You see? And we've invested a lot on projects like those, but almost all our catalytic projects collapsed along the way. Mzimvubu will be conceptualized in 60s. To date, we're still talking about Mzimvubu that is being negotiated. At that one, ndiyolala naye emgqinli andikhala noba batheni ndingumzimvubu xa bendibona eRhawutini noba batheni but that one this time around is going to be done. We can't be talking about a project which we believe is going to help more than 150,000 people and turn around in the eastern part of the province, and we're still playing around. While you were mentioning the Tswana SEZ quiz, you forgot to talk about Wild Coast SEZ, which is also being done here. You see, what is interesting, colleagues, is that these CEOs that we're talking about, have made this country move in this new paradigm shift we're creating, are from Eastern Cape. He's from Eastern Cape. Even the CEO before him was from here. Mr. Kondlo, the similar situation. And they've been intervening in assisting us because we've built capacity there over a period of time. So Eastern Cape has got what it takes. Stop being negative only. Do something positive. Yes, you can throw stones, you can do. Can you think otherwise and say, what else can I do other than just to criticize and just be like that? We committed in assisting SMMEs, we're doing our level best, we're setting up policies. Yes, it's not going to be easy to change the attitude of government, state machinery, so to speak. But we're working on that to make sure that we change. Uyakwazi kuba sebenzisa any platform that he gets, run around, government useless, ubani kuba kungancedwanga yena. Angakwazi uyi-acknowledge into yoba incediwe la SMME pha eGqeberha izolo, yavula ifactory, incediwe la so we've got to change our attitude as well as individuals, how we interact with things. Not that government is selective. We're trying to assist everyone who come our way. For instance, as you say, you would have assisted that young. This is what I get. People are saying I'm a ward council. Because every day, wherever I go, I get problem, and I'm asking people why people are having an easy access to me as a premier, more than what councillors, more than, and I ask people that question as well. Say, but premier, you answer us, you answer WhatsApp. Premier, you answer our calls, and you don't have to have my number to answer my call. When I call, I just call you, and you pick up my call. What makes politicians not to do that? You will never have an agile and capable ethical state if we run away from phones. One is phones to zigalelwe airtime, egcwele from Atlantic to Indian Ocean to attend people. You don't do that. You are given a phone, ulibele ukudlala WhatsApp, uye kunceda abantu. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Premier. And then I will give the two CEOs shortly to reflect on what has been said, and then I'll take Sherry.
Thank you, Mr. Ngesi. Let me just start and open on the bad news discussion. I think for me, the only thing I can control is the maximization of doing good things. That I can control. And then that input may lead to an output where the good news dominate. That is the perspective that I would adopt as a bureaucrat. But let me start with a bad news story. And I think about something a famous investor, Warren Buffett, always says to the people who own his companies, who runs the companies he owns. He always says, think like an owner and give me the bad news early. So the reason sometimes the media talks about the bad news is because, I'm sorry the media is here when I say this, we are not controlling the narrative about the bad news that we know. And then they will control that narrative, whether correctly or incorrectly. And I remember last year we had a very bad news, a big bad news story around April where we discovered fraud, I think over about 6 million rands or something that had been occurring over time. And the first decision we took was that we must give that story out ourselves and explain where we had failed. And I remember the editorial of the Herald was saying that, well, you should not have allowed something like this to happen. our expectation of your management capability is that that should not have happened. But the story died. After 2 days, it was gone. We have never been asked that question ever again. So, because we were very proactive about it, and of course, we did get criticized even by our shareholder in a nice way, that look, we expect an improvement. That's the point I wanted to make. The second one, and it's my segue to the issue around the business. In fact, I'm so shocked about this story about the lack of business reporters in the Eastern Cape. I actually feel bad enough to make the point I'm going to make after this. So last year, we wanted to give out a story around the energy projects. Now, there was a story about the gas projects at Kuka and everything. Now, I want the media to understand what we are also dealing with. So my colleagues who are in the energy sector, I say to them, let's now go and tell the media and explain what this thing is. So one of my colleagues, and unfortunately you must forgive us, these engineers and scientists, said, no, I don't want to be in the media. Now the media had done nothing wrong to this guy, he just is not prepared. In fact, when he gave the first story, he said, on condition that the media is not going to publish my photograph. I mean, he was like so nervous. The media, there was nothing negative. So with our marketing, we then changed. We said, okay, we are going to ask him to create a YouTube video that explains this thing. So we create this 2.5-minute YouTube video with graphics. And we also, because it was informational, we shared with the media, we shared on the social media platforms. The same person is suddenly now so excited because he's getting all these calls from all over the place. So the point I'm trying to make, you must appreciate, there's also an intrinsic apprehension about the media because not all of us are trained to deal with it. It's not an excuse, I'm just explaining it. Now, which then leads me to the point that the lecturer was making about the business news. And I actually feel bad about this. I really didn't know this. Outside of an interview process, whether it's the media, and I hope I don't go back and my organization kills me for making this offer, but let's say in my organization, I have people who understand deeply. Let's say there's a complex process around how you develop infrastructure and finance it with different methodologies, okay? What is my payback to my media partners to get them to be able to report on this? Not to interview me about the projects. And how do I avail such resources and skills to be able to explain to somebody else how that works so that they are empowered to go and report on it elsewhere? And I think it's like a subtle offer, including to the students who are studying. How many of us, actually, I mean, I've never seen an invitation, but if it came, would we respond and go and talk to those students about the subjects that we are dealing with so that they are empowered to do that in the future? And I think I want to leave it there. I'm not making an offer, but I'm just throwing it out there. That's something that I wanted to reflect on. And I think just to close off, I mean, I've taken all the feedback. For me, this probably stuck in my mind when the lecturer was speaking. I just didn't get his name, unfortunately. You put Jeff, yes. Thank you. And I think just to close off, the media or not media, but unfortunately, they never tell us this when we're studying. Because when you are starting to study, nobody tells you you're going to become a CEO. And then later on, you discover that of the top 3 most important things you're going to do, because you're not the one doing anything. There are other people better than you doing the other work. One of them is communication. But nobody tells us this early on. And I think this is the leadership challenge and responsibility. And I think the Premier was reflecting around the joke with the MECs, is that sometimes we forget that this is one of our most primary responsibilities, is to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tia. Just before this thought escapes my mind, 2 things that are coming up, that the principals are scared of the media, and that is normal. But what then do we need to do now that we have identified the problem? Because they do have the information, and they know that information better than the people that are asking them about that information. The only impediment are these cameras and these microphones and these notepads. Therefore, they need to be trained on how to deal with the media. So they need to be trained. And because they will meet media, they are going to the communities, they are opening, they are launching projects, big projects, and they will meet media there. And they will interview them, and they will get them not ready. So the government need to invest in training them so that there is a flow. Similarly, that there is a hunger on the side of the media to say, we do not understand these complex terms that you guys have. Please unpack them to us so that we are interested next time to follow on these stories. So as we are trying to have a way of working together, let's share this information. I'm going to give Mr. Kondo.
Thank you, facilitator. I'm probably going to start by just commenting on some of the inputs that we've been receiving, which you have summed up by one word: balance. Media is actually also a reflection of our society, and Professor Somadoda Fikeni once described South African democracy in this way. He said that we are a noisy, argumentative, temperamental, headline-obsessed democracy, which often produce more heat than light. But I think as media, we are also having the privilege of being change agents. We can actually change this kind of democracy that we are in South Africa, because we have got an opportunity to balance the narrative. We've got an opportunity to balance good stories with bad stories for two reasons. The reason number one, we've got a responsibility to inspire hope in our people. So we wish that when a person puts down the paper they've been reading, you should be asking yourself, how is that person feeling about the country that they live in? So there is a need then for us to have balanced what that person was consuming in terms of the kind of stories that we are communicating. It's a responsibility that we all have as citizens of this country. So that's the reason number one for balance. Reason number two is that we are not just communicating to ourselves and amongst ourselves. We are communicating with the world. Some of us who are involved in investment promotion have actually seen the impact of negative media stories that sometimes come from our country. I would remember many times where we would walk into a delegation in a country and they would have this big obsession about some statement that was made by some youth leader in our country. And they would think that that's a stance of government in South Africa. And we have to now try and say that, no, you know, that person is not even in the ruling party. This is the context, and try and explain out and explain the situation. That's because of what we are producing. We forget that the world is looking. So sometimes we need to be concerned about the kind of image that we're portraying about our country and about our province, without compromising the truth, but we need to be mindful about that. And that is even more important to some of us who are in the space of investment promotion. Maybe stepping off that to a question that was asked about the issues of load shedding. It is very unfortunate to admit that one of the biggest risks that is facing us as a country in terms of economic development is the issue of energy security. And it is also very unfortunate that as a country we have battled to deal with a very important development, which is the development of the renewable energy sector in our country. And where we sit as entities like the IDZs, we also play a very important role, like I've indicated, of policy advocacy.
And we have been talking to government about the speed and the kind of red tape that have existed around renewable energy. And thanks God that the president has taken some drastic steps to try and remove that kind of red tape. And we are sure to see some more movement around this issue of renewable energy. Now, talking specifically about what we're doing as East London IDZ, we had for many years now been lobbying for a development of a 7 megawatt solar farm in the area called Berlin, or it used to be called Berlin, Tawozu. There is another renewable energy project that we're also putting online. And we are hoping that that will bring the energy mix. And in fact, in our case, because we are hosting a lot of multinationals, there is a huge demand now that is coming from multinationals who are under pressure from their head offices to say that their head offices would like to see a nice energy mix in terms of what they are using for production, and they want to see the utilization of renewable energy. So we are actually compelled and we are under pressure, and we are hoping that the latest sort of changes in regulations around renewable energy will make this possible, because if we are not able to do the transition within these 5 years in terms of having a reasonable mix in terms of our energy in the IDZ, we may battle to attract more investors. So we are pushing that. We are pushing own generation in terms of rooftop solar generation. We have been playing a role in assisting role players in this region with the kind of management of grids, because we may have a solar farm in Berlin, but if the grid in Buffalo City is not stable or is not managed well to allow the evacuation of that renewable energy, we could still have a problem. So we are having a program where we are training electricians from municipalities and other players in terms of grid simulation, so that we can be able to utilize more and more sources of renewable energy. And that is part of our science and technology park. We are also having an investor that is in the battery manufacturing or in the battery development, renewable energy storage. Bushveld is one of the investors that the Premier will be announcing soon. We have just finished the factory. So that is now adding in terms of our capability in playing a meaningful role in renewable energy. We have already a solar panel manufacturer that has been on our platform for quite some time. So these are some of the interventions that we are making to make sure that there is better and more utilization of renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, for that elaborate response on the issue of load shedding. Now I'm going to give Uflo and Ushere Ann, and with the permission of Ms. Wanchi, Zautata, the last input from the floor. We are now at 12 o'clock. That was the set time for us to finish this dialogue, but because we started 32 minutes late, we will accommodate that and perhaps push it to 12:30. But at the end of the day, we want to realize the primary objectives that we have that compelled us to call on this engagement. As I am posing this to Ushere and to respond, I'm not posing it to her as Daily Dispatch, but to the media at large, even though she's going to respond on her part and the observations that were made. There is this proverbial observation or narrative that good news is no news. So maybe government in their corner, they are trying hard to generate good news and good stories. And one would say we cannot applaud a fish for swimming. Then who occupies that space? who is hell-bent to produce negative stories that will occupy the bulletins and the newspapers and all that? How do we accommodate those that are working hard to make the Eastern Cape that we want? I'll give it to you, Sherry.
Thank you, Mr. Facilitator. Yes, it's a common understanding that bad news sells. But that's not the driving force of what we decide when we do page one, our front page. We are actually in the newsroom desperate for good news. For the last couple of weeks, I think the news agenda has been really preoccupied by all the incidents of violence that we've seen in this province. Almost every day, and there's a lot that actually comes through to our newsroom that actually doesn't make the paper, because we at some point decide that this is too much. But let's just look at the incidents of taxi violence. Every day we're getting phone calls and messages about another shooting, another person killed, and these are issues that not only impacts on the taxi industry and the owners that are fearful of their lives, but it also impacts on the people who are using, taxis as a mode of transport. But earlier this week, we actually got together as a newsroom and we said we need to balance it out. On the front page in particular, we need to get good news. We need to tell people, that there's a bit of a shining light at the end of the dark tunnel. And for us, that is something that we really hope that as communicators, you are willing to share with us. But I also want everyone to understand that the Daily Dispatch is more than just the front page where we are restricted to 1, 2, or 3 stories at most. We actually have a whole edition and other products where we are trying to achieve this balance that we're talking about today. And I'll just mention some of it because I'm not quite sure if all the communicators are aware of just the channels that are open to them. We have a feature that we've been running for the last 2 years called Career Page. And on this particular page, and that gentleman over there actually mentioned it, is where we write about the initiatives that are being employed in this province to help the youth get employment. We profile young businessmen, young entrepreneurs, particularly black entrepreneurs who are actually not relying on someone to give them a job, but creating jobs not only for themselves, but for other people. And we profile them every Monday on our pages. We are writing about government programs. We are writing about programs within the business sector. It is there. The gentleman, the story that he was referring to was actually a profile on an unemployed graduate. And a point of correction, Mr. Facilitator, it wasn't a negative story. The purpose of profiling unemployed graduates is to put it out there to prospective employers to get them jobs. So we actually publish the contact details of those graduates. It's not to be negative, but it's to give people a step up, an opportunity to put themselves out there and say, listen, I have these skills and abilities and I can contribute towards the development of this province. Look at me. Yeah. So we have those available. We have podcasts. We run twice a week. We have news podcasts. And every Monday we have a business podcast where we are speaking to industry leaders. We have spoken to several of our government leaders, MECs, mayors, where they have had an opportunity to talk to us about what programs are currently available within the city. And broader than the city, the province, we've had the IDZ speak on that particular podcast. And if any of you want that opportunity to come and sit down with us, please do. Take advantage of that. We are hoping that by next year we can expand our product offering. And one thing that I'm really passionate about is for us to go towards isiXhosa news, because I feel like, that's the main language of this province, and we can be reaching more people if we actually speak their language. So that is something that we are going to be pushing quite extensively next year. We are in the process of actually setting up an internal studio in our newsroom where people can come and talk about the programs that will be open. And I really encourage you all to take advantage of that. And then just one other thing, we've got things like school news. So every week we're actually talking about what programs are being aimed at schools and how we're investing in our schools. We are going to the various schools and we're actually celebrating their achievements, you know, the children who are out there and getting accolades for maths and debating and science and, you know, those skills that we desperately need in this province. So we actually have quite a lot that, you know, that we offer. And I think people just need to look beyond page 1, where we are limited. Okay. And yes, when there's a day when you have a really good story, but then something really big happens and it unfortunately is negative, we are going to lean towards that because it is a big story and we can't ignore it. But there are lots of opportunities that I don't think everyone's exploring. At the back there, we've got Dominique Peel, who's our Special Projects Coordinator, and if anyone ever wants to know what more they can do in terms of just getting more coverage or just building the profile of your department a little bit more, speak to Dominique. He's open to all possibilities and negotiations. So, yeah, I mean, those for me are the big points. I'm really interested in some of the points that have been made here today, and we will certainly be following it up as a newsroom. And yeah, again, thank you to everyone who came today.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to have our last speaker to do her closing remarks. Flo.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. The role of media is like umafungwashe in a family relationship. Urakadi ka Sesotho, u-auntie ngesilungu. U-auntie is the person who will tell you the truth, who will dig for the truth, and no matter what, you will tell her everything about your boyfriend and everything else. So that's exactly what the role of the media is. It's to find the truth and to amplify it. And if you've got anything, your aunt will always amplify it for you. Unfortunately, the amplification also goes for the negative stories as well. And I think at the heart of it for us, as colleagues here, because I would like to look at us as colleagues, is what is it that we want amplified, and let's amplify those things that we are doing, those great stories, those great news that we are doing, the delivery that is happening, all those business opportunities that are there that people are not aware of. We've got those platforms as the SABC. And also I would like to note that with technology, as the gentleman has mentioned, your story just doesn't end in that 20, sometimes 18 minutes of news in a particular bulletin. Your story goes beyond the 18 minutes. So let's use the technology that we provide, which all our platforms and both radio and television have got, whether it's podcast, social media, websites. YouTube is a great place to actually play stuff, and we can promote it for you as well. We've increased also the amount of, excuse me, the amount of internships that we take as an organization, which actually speaks to building the youth environment as well. And this I actually remembered when the gentleman was talking about business reporters. You know, SABC takes, this year we took shy of 200 interns, and we don't tell anyone. I mean, we are a broadcaster, but we don't tell anyone that of the good work that we are doing. And in that mix, you've got a good mix of journalists there, you've got producers, you've got all the tech people, you've got marketing, you've got media, you've got finance, all sorts of different disciplines that are sitting within that particular space. So, and the other issue that I just want to say is that we've strengthened our representation as an organization because we've got so many different platforms, and the two key radio stations in this particular province with our regional representative through Ayanda's office, where everything that you may need and any other amplification that you may need, or you've got no complaints, just compliments only. Ayanda's office is open to listen, and she can then guide, because we are such a large organization, as to where then this should go. And she can actually do the legwork for you to ensure that whatever that you are unhappy with or whatever that you would like amplified can receive the attention that it deserves. We've got 19 radio stations, 5 TV channels, and of those radio stations, across all of them, we've got spaces where we've created for conversations and dialogue, which is where your great news or your good news can be, but also at the heart of it is the engagement with the communities, because that's very important. We don't prefer, the news will dump the news, but we've created spaces of conversation. And we would like to implore all of you to use those spaces, and perhaps it's an indictment on our side. We will package those through Ayanda's office and to share with you as to the times when you can come in and engage with our different platforms at different times, and share the good news. We want the good news of government, bearing in mind that government is actually the #1 news source for any media house. Without government, we do not have a business. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause, our panelists. Yes, ukuba maxesha besiwajonga encwadini besawuqhuba ukogqitha ngoku. As I'm now calling on MEC Dr. Da, Umama uNongqubela Peters to close for us. I just want to make these short I just want to reflect shortly. Ukuthi there is no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that there are people in our province that are doing their part in contributing to the Eastern Cape we want. They play their part in their little corners. Some, over the years, they have set up signature annual events that put our Eastern Cape on the map. I won't mention them by names. There are more, or rather there are many across the province. The call is upon government to set an agenda by servicing the people right and eliminate the so-called negative stories. If communicators are idling, it is because there's nothing to report about. Budgets are not spent, targets are not met, and there are no skilled people to implement the work of government. So if that is true, what does the government say? The media will continue to thrive on those limitations. If there's a lot that government is doing, then communicate